What did somebody say that made you think this person is out of touch with reality? Sophomore year of high school, in my chemistry class, this one girl got into a conversation about what causes the winter season with the teacher. And she goes, "Winter happens because the sun turns cold, right?" Honestly, I'm still having trouble processing that one. And it's been 4 years. A girl from my town thought the average income in America was $500K and that she was lower middle class. My dad, after watching countless hours of the History Channel, told me with a straight face that Eastern Asians are descended from aliens. He claimed it was the only way to explain their squinty eyes. Also note our hairless bodies, slender features, and advanced technology. I work as a psychologist at a school. One student had missed nearly 30 days of school in one term, 55 days, so I was asked to investigate. The mother straight-faced told me that she didn't want to drive the 2 minutes from their house because they had to cross a train track, and she thought having to wait for a train to pass was simply unacceptable. I thought she was joking. She was not. The mother's excuse made me think that she was kind of like those persons that took the sign of "wait for the train to pass before cross the track" literally, like she would actually stop at the track, even if there's no train, then spend several hours waiting for a train to pass, then cross the track, you know, like computer programs. At a family reunion, one of my distant elderly relatives kept ranting about the new $100 M plus bus tunnel that just opened in my city. She was complaining about how useless it was, for 2 reasons. It started in a suburban area and not right where she lived, even though she lived in a rural area, and it started on the side of town closest to her, so she had to drive to reach it. She wanted the tunnel to go all the way to just down her road so she could walk to it, and B, it didn't go anywhere useful because the other end was in the CBD area and not somewhere people would want to visit, like the beach. She said she had such high hopes for using it every few months, but they completely ruined it and no one will ever use it now. I pointed out that the CBD was a pretty useful destination, and she replied with "that's bollocks. Whoever goes to the city these days." I replied an estimated 200,000 people every day on their way to work, and she just rolled her eyes at me and kept on ranting about how those people are all idiots and it's not fair the tunnel wasn't built how she wanted it. She had literally no concept of the idea that generally major infrastructure projects are built where the greatest need is, so they'll get the most use, or that someone living in a rural area wanting a dedicated tunnel going straight from their street all the way to the other side of the city just so they can visit the beach every few months isn't going to get enough use to justify the huge cost, or even that people other than her actually have work that they need to get to every day. Unfortunately, she wasn't the only crazy one at my family reunion. I now refuse to attend them because I don't want to spend a few hours biting my tongue while wondering how on earth I managed to have so many idiots in my family tree. My sister's mother-in-law told her that my niece can't naturally be left-handed and that if she is that it is part of my sister's job as a parent to teach her the correct way. I'm not too old and I had a couple of teachers try and tell me I was writing wrong. It's still ingrained into many people that left-handed is somehow an abomination. A woman I work with once said, "I'm convinced I'm immune to cancer because neither my mom nor my grandmother had it." Said lady has smoked more than a pack a day for 30 years but uses the above evidence as a reason why she's never had her lungs checked. My grandma smoked for most of her life. I think she said she started at 14 or so. Well, it took until she was 90 but she died from lung cancer. My mum once said that the sun couldn't be a star because stars only come out at night. She hasn't lived that one down, haha. I once had to explain to my partner that thunder and lightning were not two completely separate phenomena but that one was a product of the other. She even knew about the count how many seconds are between the lightning and thunder thing. She is an incredibly smart woman otherwise. It's just that no one had ever actually explained it to her before. A colleague and I both had our laptops out at work. He had some movies on his that he was offering to share onto mine for later viewing. I suggested an ad hoc Wi-Fi network as a means of quickly and painlessly transferring the files. "Oh no, I don't believe in Wi-Fi." "Sorry, what? That sounds like a joke, tbh. I worked at a little all-local, all-organic grocery store for a bit. A lady comes in with a friend. They are looking at the eggs. She goes, "Are these eggs organic?" Well, they're not certified, but these are grown here in town by someone who feeds them a non-soy, non-GMO supplemental feed, but they're on pasture most of the time, so they eat bugs. Well, yes, quite a few of them. It's good for organic pest control in the gar. To her friend, those bugs could come from anywhere. This is why you have to ask the hard questions about your food and really know what you're putting in your body. King Soopers has actual organic eggs. I had a person at work once say that you'd get hypothermia and literally freeze in about 10 minutes. It was around 20 degrees Fahrenheit. His reasoning: your body is mostly water. P.S. He told a skinnier kid that it would only take him 8 minutes for the same to happen. I live in Canada. It is currently -32 degrees Celsius, -25.5 in freedom units outside. Maybe they should come chill here for a bit and see if they freeze in seconds. I can't go to jail. I'm Canadian. Overheard a guy in cuffs say it to the American police officer who just arrested him. Well, that's a 10-minute major then. I have an aunt who married a rather wealthy man. Like, she lives next door to the owner of the Dallas Stars and Texas Rangers. My cousin went to Spain a few years back to look at yachts her husband was thinking of buying. She said while I was visiting, and pretty much everyone has at least a few $1 million in real estate. Words failed me. My mom was absolutely certain that corn could only be harvested by hand. I showed her videos of corn harvesting machines, and she insisted they were all CGI. It grew into a pretty significant argument. Eventually she called my sister, who is a librarian, to ask her. When my sister agreed with me, she said okay then and never spoke of it again. I watched my grandmother shove a load of books off of a shelf at the bookstore the other day because she wanted one that wouldn't come out. When she walked away and left a pile of them on the ground, she looked at me and said it's okay. It's their job to pick that stuff up. Speaking from a retail experience, no it's not. You're just adding extra work. I mean, yes, it's the janitor's job to clean the bathrooms, but that doesn't mean you can't crap on the floor. My rich friend complaining that the cleaner broke her back, so I had to do the hoovering myself and feed the dogs. It was actually comical to listen to his hysterics. No regard whatsoever for the poor cleaner's well-being. New fridges cost close to $10,000, says my mill, who has a fridge that hasn't been working for almost a month. They are using one of the drawers to keep everything in, as apparently that part works, but all the shelves are empty. Update: not talking about a built-in fridge. They spent about $5k on their current one, purchased 5 or 6 years ago, refused to get a repairman in. I've mentioned it here before, but twice this year I've had a co-worker threaten me for things that only occurred in his head. A few days ago he got in my face because I asked how was your Christmas vacation? My mum, she once told my husband, a guy that's been working to help support his struggling parents since he was 13, that we should just have kids and God will provide for us. Her rationale was that she had 7 kids and never once struggled. Thanks mum, we can't all just quit college to marry a multimillionaire a decade older than we are. A friend's uncle, who is a spiritual healer of some sort, claimed one day he would be known as the first man to cure cancer with spiritual healing techniques, whatever that mean. The woman he treated stopped her treatments because she was cured and died inside 6 months. Apparently no one saw fit to bring that guy to justice. His explanation was, she died from a different cancer that was at the same place with the same symptoms at the same time, and the first cancer was hiding the second one, so he couldn't treat her properly because, you know, I couldn't feel the second one. I wish he would go to prison. She died from a different cancer. He was that different cancer. My boss has some very weird one-liners. He's often, not joking, told me he was born in the same year as me, when he's a 60-year-old man, and I'm in my 20s. He also often refereed to himself as Little Boy Blue, nodding politely as 90% of my job at this point. I was struggling to pay bills and a friend was like, don't worry, your mom and dad care about you, they'll pay them for you. I told her I wanted to be a self-sufficient adult and my parents didn't have the money to cover my bills anyway. Her mind was blown. My mom came to my work once and when she got there I handed her a few bills and some change. A girl I worked with was wondering who that woman was and I was giving her money. When I told her I'll lend my mom money, her jaw dropped and she asked me so many questions. My mom is poorer than I am. Had a roommate a few years back. A mutual friend of ours helped us move in. The mutual asked us if we could let him keep a table and some chairs at our place until he moved into his new places as well, and we agreed. After a few weeks I helped our mutual move his stuff from our place into his new place while my roommate was out. When he got home he asked where his table and chairs went. When I reminded him that our mutual friend was going to take them back eventually, he then proceeded to argue with me about how he had brought the table and chairs from home. Thankfully no longer living with that bundle of joy anymore. I worked with a woman who came to me and another manager and she said to us, now that business is slowing, I'd like to go part-time and work less hours. When the next schedule came out she wanted to know why she had so few hours and denied ever asking for less. I was so glad that there was someone else there so I know that I wasn't the crazy one. I worked at McDonald's, Sydney, Australia, for the good part of my teen years. One shift I was on register taking orders and this lady came up to me. She must have been in her mid to late 40s. She said, "Wow, McDonald's, you guys still exist? Haven't seen you around in years." That is word for FKN word. I was like, what? What's more important, a friendship or a job? Considering I've had that same job for nearly 20 years and plan on retiring from it, combined with the fact that I've only known the friend for 5 years and caught him in more lies than I can count, well, I gotta go give that one some serious thought. 99% of the time if someone gives you an ultimatum like that, the one to drop is the person giving you the ultimatum. When I say Google it and they respond with I can't do it, I don't know how. It's almost 2018 and that person has $1,000, 1,150 euros in my country, smartphone in his pocket. I've tried to really step up my Google foo in the last couple years. Being able to access the wealth of knowledge and information on the web easily through Google is just the best. I've been thinking about putting Master Googler on my resume, but not sure how it would be received. After getting a Dear John letter from my ex that explains why she wants to get divorced, we were sitting in the car and she asks me, "So after we get divorced, do you think we could get together sometimes and have sex?" She leaves me for another guy and has the balls to ask for casual sex after our divorce. Really quite pathetic. I note the frick out of that. My dad retired last November. After being out of work for a few months he decided he needed a simple job to keep him busy. He applied at Total Wine as a cashier and asked for $20 an hour because that's what he thought minimum wage was up to. An American tourist I met. I live in South America. When I asked her how it felt to be so far from home, told me that she really isn't that far because these so-called foreign countries are actually located within the United States and they just fly the plane in circles for hours and hours to convince you that you're in another country. A very close friend, my money is my money but my partner's money is also my money. To clarify, she wasn't going to accept her partner having access to her money but only her to his. Also she's single. I work with a girl, she's 21. Bit of a stoner, living with her boyfriend who works at Pizza Hut. We also work in food service. She thinks she wants to marry him, but he has to spend at least $10k on a ring. And when she gets married, she wants one room in her house that is all pink, so she can get ready and put her makeup on. Then she's going to sit around the house all day smoking the dankest weed in a pink fur-lined housecoat. Then when her man comes home they can do their thing. Yes. Reminds me of a friend I had when I was 18. Her life plan was literally to become a drug lord and move to Portugal. Except she thought Portugal was in South America and refused to believe me when I reminded her it is in fact in Europe. I worked at a vet clinic and a woman came in with her dog who had a horrible skin problem stemming from a flea infestation. Before I could even say anything, she claimed someone was after her and had been stabbing her and her dog in their sleep with tree bark. It took me a few seconds to process that one. She also told me that she knew we hadn't actually euthanized her old dog that she had years ago, but that we had sold her to Hollywood. Apparently she saw her in a commercial and that was her proof. The dog would have been like 20 by that point, so no, we didn't sell her to Hollywood. Honestly kind of sad, but the only person I have ever directly interacted with who was truly out of touch with reality. Good thing I'm not human. The lizard people are getting more bold. Literally anything my mom shares on Facebook, I only have her added because I need to monitor her posts for when she inevitably gets her account compromised again. There is a story behind the last part. Please, indulge us. Worked with a guy that was a major conspiracy theorist. He said zip codes are used in the case that the government wants to drop bombs on US soil. Yep, because they wouldn't ever use coordinates. Right, Matt? I mean, that doesn't even make sense as a conspiracy. That's like saying we all have addresses so the government knows where we live. That guy is beyond just being a moron. A lady who is a regular at my store was checking out the deli case. I was doing my nightly rounds and stopped to see how that department was doing. She looked at me and said everything looks good. It looks so reptilian. I didn't know how to respond, so I walked away. When my mom lost her crap screaming at me, and when confronted had a completely different version of the story. It's not so much one time, as every time. About then I realized that you can't get an apology from someone who genuinely believes they're an angel and just moved on with my life without her. A narcissist's prayer. That didn't happen. And if it did, it wasn't that bad. And if it was, that's not a big deal. And if it is, that's not my fault. And if it was, I didn't mean it. And if I did, you deserved it. My butthole of an uncle once told my grandmother that it was her fault my grandfather got Alzheimer's because she didn't take care of him well enough. My oldest son got RSV when he was 5 weeks old and had to be hospitalized. My wife's bitchy aunt told her that he was sick because she was supplementing her breast milk with formula. Really late to the thread, but I had a client call houses in the ballpark of what mine cost. Scary ghetto houses. I live in Texas, so you can surprisingly get a non-scary house for around $200k. I'm not ashamed. I have a few health conditions that my parents and grandmother never allowed me to disclose to my family or friends because it would be difficult to get me married. Eugenics used to be hugely popular with the general population before the whole Nazi thing. Having just one mentally ill family member would mean the entire family was considered tainted and no one would want to marry into the family out of fear of the potential children would not be perfect. Someone seriously asked me, wow, how do you get your baby so tan? My Native American wife holding the baby. I always avoid this person when I can. How can you be so dumb? Toaster oven. Next question. Overheard from a girl at college freshman orientation in 2008. I'm definitely worried. The economy is so bad my parents had to sell our vacation home. Well, you know, the second one we don't visit as often. Yeah. Don't mind me with my flat of ramen. Ugh, I can't imagine having to go to the same vacation home every time. I grew up in a rich town not being rich. I will never forget this. One girl saw me with my iPhone 3G in high school, and I was super lucky to have it, and the iPhone 4 had come out the weekend before. She then asked me 100% seriously, why don't you have the new iPhone? She didn't really understand not everyone could afford the new iPhone every time one came out. My junior year of high school, in small town North Carolina, I took a psychology class for fun. My teacher, who otherwise seemed normal, heard a student playing Umbrella by Rihanna on their phone and said, "Turn that off. She's praising Allah and it's Illuminati propaganda." I assumed he meant the repeated Ella's, but I could never get him to explain the rest of it. Inst umbrella, althano umbrella, by the will of the umbrella, praise umbrella. Used to have a friend who was really into crystals. She dropped $300 on a thumb-sized piece of rose quartz because it is totally aligned with her body's natural frequency. I didn't even try to tell her she had been scammed. My grandmother, who doesn't live with us, told my out-of-work brother that he needs to stop doing work around the house because I, being female, should be the one doing it all. Never mind, I'm the only one with any sort of income. Lem do all the housework too. KTHX. We had a good laugh at that one. This reminds me of when my now wife told her grandmother we were engaged. Her grandmother smiled and was very happy to us. Then she pulled us aside and handed me a moccasin shoe. She told me if wife ever gave me snapback, I was to beat her with it. I honestly was speechless. I have my now wife the floppy leather sandal and we beat each other with it when we get out of line. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.